You and your mother are co-plaintiffs. Quanille Jr. is not your biological child. And you took Miss Mylan and her other 6 kids into your home. She's trying to take you for a ride by claiming this baby is yours. You're unsure if you were already pregnant when you cheated.
Because I watched my son break down at the hospital. You know, he was going to be devastated if this child wasn't his.
Eventually he started, like, I could tell it was a little more flirting going on. Like, he'd be like, I wasn't taking him very seriously because it is an age difference between me and Mr. Jones.
Became close with the kid. He would play with the kids.
Yeah, he became real close.
And did you enjoy that interaction, having someone there, a father figure for your children?
Yeah, I did. Friends, like I said, and then we just eventually did have sexual relations. I didn't take.
When the DNA test becomes more than just a result, when hearts, homes, and histories stand at the edge of truth, people regret taking the test not because it exposes lies, but because it shows what they were never prepared to accept. And in Judge Lauren Lake's courtroom, truth changes everything. This story unfolds in a space where love, responsibility, and truth collide. In the world of family disputes and emotional turmoil, the DNA test has become a modern symbol, one that promises clarity but also delivers consequences that no one predicts. Many people step into the courtroom thinking they want certainty, but when the results come, they begin to understand why so many people regret taking DNA tests. The truth reshapes identities, relationships, loyalty, memory, and future all at once. And in this particular case, under the guidance and presence of Judge Lauren Lake, the weight of truth becomes heavier than words can hold. The situation begins with a complicated relationship dynamic, layered with emotional history, personal struggles, and the intertwined lives of adults and children. The case becomes a reflection of how relationships develop not only based on love but also on need, shared responsibility, and vulnerability. A child is at the center, not by choice, and the adults surrounding that child are caught in a storm of uncertainty. This is not just a courtroom moment. It is a deeply human moment where the relationship between law and justice becomes visible. Law can declare biological facts, but justice asks what should be done with those facts. Law says yes or no, but justice asks why, how, and what next. In the emotional space of this description, we examine how people form families beyond biology, how trust is built and broken, and how past relationships continue to echo into new lives. The emotional weight begins when one partner steps up to take responsibility, believing that commitment forms fatherhood, not mere blood. There is a belief that parenthood is about presence, sacrifice, love, and willingness to be there when life is fragile. Yet the shadow of doubt grows because certain signs, timelines, and confessions raise uncertainties that no heart can fully silence. The mother involved admits that there were moments of confusion and conflict, moments where emotions led her back and forth between two men. Those decisions form the basis of doubt that eventually leads to the DNA test. The issue becomes more complex when the evidence stage in divorce case procedures is discussed. This isn't just a question of is he the father? It becomes a question of emotional betrayal, legal responsibility, financial support, and identity building. The child support system, referenced often in Supreme Court child support rulings, exists to protect children, not parents. But in many emotional entanglements, child support becomes a battlefield rather than support for the child's well-being. This story also reflects broader themes discussed on the Game-Changing Attorney podcast, which often explores how legal decisions intersect with deeply personal realities. It also mirrors conversations heard in shows like the Divorce Course podcast, where emotional testimonies mix with legal frameworks. Law and justice do not always feel aligned, and this becomes clear when a father figure must face the possibility that he may not be biologically related to the child he has held, cared for, and bonded with. The question arises, what defines a parent? DNA or devotion? Judge Lauren Lake has always emphasized that paternity court is not simply about science. It is about identity, truth, and emotional healing. The concept of justice in jurisprudence suggests that justice seeks fairness, but fairness is often painful. When a person who has devoted time, care, finances, and emotional support to a child learns that biology says otherwise, there is a breaking point. This becomes a moment of internal conflict that no ruling can fully resolve. This situation also touches on themes often discussed in Celebrate Recovery testimonies, where individuals share how their pain and past mistakes helped shape who they are becoming. Healing is not only for those who were wronged, it is also for those who made choices without considering the consequences. Redemption becomes possible only when truth is accepted. There are also echoes of adoption stories, full episodes, where individuals raise children not biologically theirs, yet love them with full and unconditional hearts. In those stories, the absence of genetic connection never lessens the bond. And yet, in paternity disputes, society often places heavy emotional value on biological links, even when emotional bonds have already been formed and lived. But the situation becomes even more layered when we consider adverse inference in the Evidence Act, meaning when someone avoids testing or delays truth, doubt grows. Here, however, the test is taken. There is no avoidance. It is taken with expectation, fear, hope, and desire for clarity. People believe they are ready for truth, but truth does not arrive softly. The result of the DNA test does not simply answer a scientific question. It shifts responsibility, identity, emotional attachment, and direction of life. The person who cared for the child now confronts the emotional consequence of loving deeply without genetic ties. And this experience is echoed often in DNA test cheating stories, where truth reveals more than infidelity. It reveals the fragility of trust, love, memory, and promises. The emotional pain, the silent battles, the unspoken regrets, and the trembling hope all center around the idea that truth changes everything. The courtroom becomes more than a legal environment. It becomes a place where memories clash with reality. Judge Lauren Lake stands as the guide through this emotional terrain, balancing empathy, law, and fairness. She acknowledges the pain while holding the truth firm and steady. Yet, even when truth breaks hearts, it also allows healing to begin. The unfolding truth in this story reflects a universal human experience. People often believe they are prepared for answers, but the answers challenge their identity, their history, and the meaning they have given to love. Once the DNA test enters the picture, reality no longer rests on assumptions or emotional bonds alone. The test places a scientific mirror in front of a person's life, forcing them to confront the emotional difference between being a father and feeling like a father. Judge Lauren Lake recognizes that individuals walk into her courtroom carrying emotional wounds, past traumas, insecurities, and hopes. She sees families shaped not only by genetics but by compassion, care, and continuous sacrifice. Her court provides a stage where truth becomes a process rather than a moment, and where decisions must be made with dignity, even when the truth hurts deeply. In this environment, the question becomes not only whether the man is biologically connected to the child, but how emotional responsibilities have shaped him. This case explores the relationship between law and justice, which is far from simple. Law deals with facts, what can be proven, measured, and documented. Justice, however, seeks fairness, what feels morally and emotionally right. In matters involving family, relationships, identity, and children, the line between law and justice is fragile. People expect the law to solve emotional pain, but legal systems cannot repair hearts. They can only clarify circumstances. Justice asks individuals to respond to truth with maturity. The emotional weight of this situation becomes even clearer when considering the long-term effects of discovering a child is not biologically yours. The heart remembers laughter, bonding moments, tears wiped away, birthdays celebrated, nights of rocking a crying baby to sleep. None of those things disappear when the DNA test reveals a biological separation. This reveals a painful conflict. Can love exist without blood? Many adoption journeys, which are well documented in Adoption Stories full episodes, show that yes, love can thrive without biology, but those stories are nurtured with acceptance. In contrast, when the truth comes unexpectedly through a DNA test, love and identity are shaken without preparation. The emotional reality is that a man can devote himself to a child, believing he is fulfilling the ultimate role of a father, only to learn that biology does not confirm that bond. This realization is heavy, especially when society often places pressure on biological connection as a sign of legitimacy. However, Judge Lauren Lake has repeatedly shown that fatherhood is more than genetics. It is commitment, presence, and love. This case illustrates how emotional responsibility can be the foundation of fatherhood, even when blood says otherwise. The mother in this situation experiences regret as well. Regret for decisions made during emotional confusion. Regret for not understanding the long-term consequences. Regret for the pain caused to someone who stepped into a role with sincerity. Her journey becomes one of accountability, understanding, and emotional maturity. She must now face the truth in a way that allows healing rather than denial. This often parallels stories shared in Celebrate Recovery testimonies, where personal struggles lead individuals to transformation and self-awareness. Healing requires admitting the truth, facing consequences, and choosing to grow. The narrative also takes place in a psychological atmosphere influenced by the evidence stage in divorce case settings. The court environment forces personal truths into public legal language. Statements are not just spoken emotionally, they become part of official records. When love meets legal documentation, emotions must learn to stand in the presence of structure and logic. Truth becomes formal, not private. Additionally, the presence of potential accusations of deception or dishonesty reminds us of how DNA test cheating stories often reveal emotional and trust-based damage rather than simple biological revelations. The DNA test becomes a symbol of betrayal, not because the child is at fault, but because the adult relationships surrounding the child's conception were unstable. The test does not simply show whether someone is the father. It often exposes the emotional story people tried to avoid confronting. This also relates to the adverse inference in evidence act, where withholding clarity or avoiding truth can create deeper suspicion and emotional conflict. However, in this case, both parties sought clarity. The desire to know the truth is itself an act of emotional courage, even if the results create pain. The emotional atmosphere further reflects themes similar to discussions in the Divorce Course podcast, where couples and families struggle to untangle emotional bonds from legal obligations. Divorce does not only end a relationship, it restructures identity, responsibility, and future possibilities. When the question of paternity overlaps with potential separation, the stability of the family becomes more vulnerable. Additionally, the presence of multiple children in the home introduces a layer of responsibility that extends beyond just the adults involved. Children form attachments quickly, and those attachments are meaningful. When a man becomes actively present in a child's life, he becomes part of that child's emotional foundation. The Supreme Court child support principles emphasize protecting children from emotional and financial instability. When paternity is questioned, the stability of the child must be considered deeply. The emotional meaning of fatherhood is not erased by DNA results. Biology can tell us who contributed genetically, but it cannot define who nurtured, protected, guided, or shaped a child's life. Fatherhood is an identity of the heart. And yet, the legal and emotional worlds collide when biology contradicts lived experience. This case also highlights a core idea in the concept of justice in jurisprudence. Justice must consider both fairness and compassion. It must acknowledge emotional investment without ignoring biological truth. Judge Lauren Lake embodies this blend. She holds the truth, but she also honors the heart. She encourages individuals to act with dignity, empathy, and responsibility even after the truth is revealed. The emotional aftermath of such a DNA revelation is complex. The man must now redefine his role not only in the child's life but in his own understanding of himself. Was the love real? Yes. Was the bond meaningful? Yes. Does the truth erase the past? No. But the direction of the future now changes. The mother must now rebuild trust, stability, and emotional clarity for her children and herself. The child remains innocent, deserving of love, protection, and support from all who care. In this narrative, the courtroom does not represent conflict, it represents transformation. It is the space where truth steps forward, where emotional pain is acknowledged, and where healing becomes possible, even when painful. The DNA test does not break what matters most. It reveals what must be healed. And though truth changes everything, it can also be the beginning of something stronger and more real than what came before. The truth in this story has already reshaped connections, but the journey does not end with the DNA result. The emotional aftermath is often where the deepest lessons are formed. When Judge Lauren Lake announces the truth, the air shifts because the courtroom is not intended to punish. It is intended to illuminate. The truth is not given to break people, but to set the foundation for honest rebuilding. Yet rebuilding requires courage. The man who believed he was the father now stands at a crossroads. He is confronted with the undeniable reality that the child he has held, cared for, and imagined a future with is not biologically connected to him. And yet, biology does not erase memory, nor does it cancel emotional devotion. He carries the emotional imprint of fatherhood within him, something that cannot simply be dismissed because science gave a different answer. This moment reflects the core tension between law and justice. Legally, his obligations may shift. The law focuses on biological truth, lineage, and documented responsibility. Justice, however, asks a different question. What does love make possible now? The emotional identity formed through caregiving cannot be erased. The truth does not undo the time spent nurturing a child. And yet, moving forward requires a redefinition of identity. He must now decide whether fatherhood is a choice he continues, or a chapter he allows to close. For the mother, this moment requires accountability. Emotional accountability, psychological accountability, ethical accountability. She must acknowledge the weight of her past decisions, not only in terms of romantic relationships, but in terms of the emotional stability of her children. The truth forces her to confront how unresolved emotional history led to this moment. And yet, even in this accountability, there is an opportunity for growth, forgiveness, and rebuilding. The emotional dynamic as explored in Celebrate Recovery testimonies highlights how past wounds often shape present decisions. People do not make choices in isolation. They are influenced by loneliness, fear of abandonment, longing for connection, and desire to feel valued. These emotional forces do not excuse the consequences, but they help explain them. Healing must involve understanding, not just guilt. The presence of multiple children in the home also introduces a responsibility that stretches beyond just one child. Children observe everything. They learn emotional language from their surroundings. The way adults handle conflict, truth, accountability, and forgiveness teaches children how to handle their own emotional future. This moment becomes a defining example for them, not of blame, but of growth. This situation mirrors stories heard on the Divorce Course podcast, where couples navigating separation must relearn how to communicate, co-parent, and make decisions that prioritize emotional well-being over emotional reaction. The adults must now decide how to maintain peace even in the presence of emotional hurt. This is where maturity matters most. The emotional implications of DNA test cheating stories often reveal that the true pain is not just in the biological result, but in the feeling that trust and intention were violated. The man who believed he was the father may now question his own identity, not only as a father figure but as a partner. He may wonder whether the emotional investment he made was misplaced. And yet, Judge Lauren Lake consistently emphasizes that doing the right thing is never meaningless. The love given to a child always matters, no matter the DNA. The mother must now rebuild her emotional integrity. Her growth will come from acknowledging the pain caused, not ignoring it. She must show her children and herself that mistakes do not define a person's worth. She must act, live, and love in a way that rebuilds trust. This also ties into the concept of justice in jurisprudence, which acknowledges that justice is not simply about declaring right or wrong. It is about creating space for healing. Justice requires compassion to coexist with truth. It does not minimize consequences, but it provides hope. In cases involving children, the legal side often connects to Supreme Court child support principles, which focus on the best interest of the child. The child remains innocent. The child remains deserving of protection, love, and security. The child should not carry the emotional consequences of adult decisions. The adults must choose emotional maturity for the child's sake. The idea of fatherhood itself is transformed in this moment. Sometimes, love continues even when biology does not support it. Sometimes, love reshapes itself into mentorship, support, or presence without legal obligation. Sometimes, love must release, not because it wants to, but because it must protect dignity, identity, and emotional clarity. This truth also parallels the emotional depth seen in adoption stories' full episodes, where parental identity is built not from biology but from choice. Adoption teaches that love can be formed from decision, devotion, and stability. Yet adoption is intentional. The difference here is that the emotional bond was formed before the truth was known. This makes the emotional shift more difficult, but not impossible. The mother now must rebuild her internal sense of accountability. She must protect her children's emotional development by prioritizing honesty, stability, and continued healthy structure. She must understand that her children learn from her emotional example. The man who believed he was the father now must confront a deeply human question. Does love fade when truth changes? The truth may change the structure of the relationship, the legal responsibilities, and the future path. But the love that was given was real, meaningful, and valuable. Truth changes everything, but it also clarifies what was built on love and what was built on illusion. This is why Judge Lauren Lake emphasizes healing. Healing does not happen instantly. It requires reflection, forgiveness, acceptance, and emotional maturity. Healing means acknowledging pain without allowing pain to define the future. This is where the relationship between law and justice becomes beautiful. Law reveals the truth. Justice guides the emotional response to that truth. Justice says, accept the truth, honor the love, forgive the mistakes, and become wiser. The story ends not with loss, but with transformation. The man now understands that fatherhood is not simply about biology. He has proven that his capacity to love is genuine and strong. The mother now understands the importance of honesty and emotional responsibility. The child remains surrounded by love, not broken love, but love that is being reshaped. Families are not destroyed by truth, they are rebuilt by it. The DNA test did not take away love, it clarified the path forward. The courtroom under Judge Lauren Lake becomes not an end, but the beginning of emotional clarity, accountability, and healing. And in the end, that is where true justice lives.